What Camilla just realized behind closed doors is that her absolute authority over the royal household could be entirely dismantled by a single line item on a procurement ledger. In less than 48 hours, the Queen Consort went from dictating the domestic reality of the British monarchy to realizing she no longer had the authority to order a single bottle of wine for the palace cellars. The humiliation occurred not on a global red carpet, but at the heavily guarded tradesman entrance of the Balmoral estate. Her son Tom Parker Bowles had arrived to oversee a highly lucrative, privately contracted provisioning delivery for the upcoming summer retreat, only to be stopped by the estate manager. His security clearance had been completely revoked, and his multi-million-pound vendor contract had been legally shredded. This is the story of the secret financial laundering operation Camilla attempted to execute through the royal supply chain. How Prince William and Prince Edward uncovered the unauthorized vendor contracts, the silent and ruthless administrative retaliation that followed, and the chilling realization that her family has been permanently blacklisted from the wealth of the crown. What this video will unpack is a masterclass in forensic institutional warfare. We will examine how a seemingly mundane domestic management decision was actually a desperate scramble for commercial survival, the precise moment the palace auditors unmasked her strategy, and the agonizing realization that she is merely a temporary tenant in an empire owned by her enemies. To understand the sheer velocity of this domestic humiliation, we must first rebuild the towering illusion of supremacy that Camilla operated under within the private walls of the royal estates. For 3 decades, she played the most calculating long game in modern royal history. She survived the intense public outrage of the 1990s and managed the slow, institutional erasure of Princess Diana's legacy. But for Camilla, securing the crown was only half the battle. She firmly believed that by securing King Charles's unwavering devotion, she had secured absolute control over the domestic machinery of the institution. Following the coronation, she assumed the role of the undisputed matriarch of the royal households. She ran the daily operations of Buckingham Palace, Highgrove, and Sandringham with unquestioned authority. She dictated the guest lists, managed the staffing, and controlled the vast, multi-million-pound budgets required to maintain the opulent lifestyle of the monarchy. Viewers and royal commentators noticed her increasingly assertive posture, projecting a narrative that she was the steady hand guiding the family's private life through the king's illness. She felt completely untouchable, convinced that her proximity to the sovereign gave her the ultimate veto power over the physical estates. But that glittering illusion of domestic control was merely a sophisticated smokescreen for a deep, terrifying commercial desperation. Behind the administrative curtain, what appears to be true is that Camilla recognized the fragile nature of her timeline. She knew with absolute certainty that her constitutional relevance would drop to zero the exact moment her husband's reign ended. Driven by the fear of her impending isolation, her private office quietly initiated a hidden, highly lucrative structural maneuver. She attempted to use the royal procurement system as a permanent financial pipeline for her non-royal children. Camilla quietly pressured estate managers to grant exclusive, highly profitable catering and supply contracts to a network of businesses directly tied to her son, Tom Parker Bowles. Her objective was subtle but immense. She sought to secure royal warrants and long-term vendor agreements for his associates, effectively laundering the sovereign administrative privilege into a permanent privately controlled cash flow. She wanted to guarantee that the Parker Bowles bloodline would continue to extract massive financial dividends from the royal estates, securing a billionaire lifestyle for her family long after the actual royal family had locked them out. It was a staggering exploitation of the king's weakness, executed while the rest of the institution was desperately trying to manage a constitutional health crisis. But inside the modern British monarchy, the illusion of supreme authority always shatters against the cold reality of administrative discipline. Prince William does not manage the royal inheritance like an emotional son waiting his turn. He oversees the sprawling financial architecture of the crown with the forensic, unyielding precision of a ruthless chief executive officer. As the Prince of Wales, William controls the Duchy of Cornwall, the massive estate that funds the private lives of the royal family. In recent months, heavily supported by the firm, uncompromising administrative oversight of Prince Edward the Duke of Edinburgh, William launched a comprehensive internal audit of all royal household expenditures and vendor contracts. When the unauthorized provisioning agreements, the inflated catering invoices, and the draft royal warrants tied to Camilla's family crossed their desks, the strategy was immediately unmasked. William did not see a mother merely trying to support her son's culinary career. He saw a calculated, cynical attempt to siphon away the physical and financial heritage of the institution to fund a private dynasty that has no constitutional right to the throne. For William, this crossed a sacred line. This was a direct threat to the financial integrity of the crown and a massive reputational liability waiting to happen. William's silent, enduring grief for his mother transformed into an impenetrable, weaponized shield. For decades, he had watched Camilla slowly erase Princess Diana's legacy. Now, he was watching her attempt to financially secure her own non-royal legacy, using the very treasury meant to sustain the future of the monarchy. He did not scream. He did not confront Camilla in the corridors of Clarence House. And he absolutely did not leak a single word to the tabloid press. Instead, William utilized the strict, devastating power of the royal administrative protocols. Together with Prince Edward, William convened a quiet, extraordinary meeting of the sovereign financial comptrollers and the senior estate managers. They executed a masterpiece of weaponized restraint. They drafted a comprehensive, legally binding structural update to the royal household's procurement guidelines. This new operational protocol established a rigorous, ironclad rule regarding conflicts of interest. It explicitly dictated that no non-lineal family members of the sovereign or the consort could receive vendor contracts, royal warrants, or financial dividends from the royal estates. All existing agreements tied to the Parker Bowles network were declared immediately void. Furthermore, the protocol placed Camilla's son on a permanent administrative blacklist, barring his businesses and his associates from any future engagement with the Crown estate. The execution of this silent revenge was designed to land with clinical precision. William bypassed Camilla completely and allowed the palace's administrative apparatus to deliver the blow through standard corporate channels. When the estate manager turned Tom Parker Bowles away at the tradesman gates of Balmoral, holding the revised security protocol, it was not an administrative error. It was a cold, unmistakable notification that the keys to the kingdom had officially changed hands, and the Parker Bowles family had been permanently locked out of the royal treasury. Furious, humiliated, and deeply shaken by this sudden financial containment, Camilla immediately retreated to the private quarters of the king. She expected the same unyielding defense her husband had provided throughout their 3-decade partnership. She demanded that Charles pull rank discipline his son and his brother, and restore the highly lucrative contracts for her family. She demanded the absolute protection she believed her crown guaranteed. But, as she laid out her frantic grievance waiting for the sovereign decree that would put William in his place, the trap finally snapped shut. King Charles did the one thing she never expected. He did absolutely nothing. Looking frail and entirely resigned, the king sat in agonizing silence, staring at the floor, offering his wife no defense and no financial reprieve. In that suffocating moment of silence, Camilla finally understood the terrifying reality of her position. The silence of King Charles in that private room was not merely the failure of a husband to protect his wife. It was the formal institutional surrender of a reigning monarch. For 3 decades, Charles had moved heaven and earth to validate Camilla, challenging the established church, defying public hostility, and straining his relationship with his own mother just to place a crown on her head. Yet, when confronted with the cold digital evidence of her commercial overreach and the flawless administrative execution of his son and brother, he sat completely paralyzed. His silence was the definitive psychological climax of their entire partnership. Charles was not simply choosing his son over his wife. He was acknowledging a brutal constitutional reality. The king understood that the sovereign is merely a temporary custodian, while the checkbook, the estates, and the crown itself belong to the future. By refusing to overrule William and Edward, Charles effectively signed the decree of his wife's impending isolation, leaving her and her non-royal family to face the machinery of succession completely unprotected. To fully grasp the staggering reality of Camilla's defeat, you have to look past the velvet ropes, the state banquets, and the royal carriages, and examine the cold forensic financial architecture of the British monarchy. This is where the illusion of absolute power crashes into the brutal reality of commercial desperation. When the public looks at Camilla, they see a queen who appears to command a sprawling empire of historic castles and private estates. But behind the administrative curtain, the truth is entirely different. Camilla owns absolutely nothing. When Charles ascended to the throne, the multi-billion-dollar engine of the Duchy of Cornwall passed automatically and entirely into the hands of Prince William. This estate is not an honorary title. It is a massive corporate reality that controls the private wealth, the agricultural lands, and the discretionary funding that sustains the daily lives of the royal family. The royal estates, like Balmoral and Sandringham, are not just holiday homes. They are massive multi-million-pound operational entities requiring vast procurement networks, catering logistics, and vendor contracts. William controls the liquid assets. William controls the property leases. William controls the procurement ledgers. Charles receives the sovereign grant, which is strictly audited taxpayer money used for official duties. But the private untethered wealth now belongs to his son. This means that Camilla is living in a state of absolute fiscal dependency. She does not hold the deeds to the palaces she sleeps in, and as the recent vendor audit proved, she does not even have the authority to grant a catering contract or a royal warrant to her own son. The staff who manage her schedule and the estate managers who guard the gates of the royal properties are ultimately paid through structures that William actively oversees and will soon inherit completely. If Charles were to pass away or officially abdicate, as the private rehearsals highly suggest, Camilla's commercial reality becomes devastatingly clear. She would be a widow relying entirely on a financial settlement dictated by William. And Catherine, she cannot retreat to a royal estate without their permission. Her frantic attempt to secretly secure lucrative vendor pipelines for her children was an emergency life raft. What looked like a domestic disagreement over a grocery delivery was actually the moment Camilla realized she was a tenant in an empire owned by her enemies. That fiscal reality perfectly mirrors the institutional shift happening in plain sight, with Charles retreating into his cancer treatments and William holding the administrative reins. Catherine is actively redesigning the new order. The subtle shifts in protocol are carrying devastating deeper meanings. Royal insiders have noted that the management of the royal households now flows directly through the Prince and Princess of Wales. Catherine does not need to launder royal privileges into catering contracts to secure her family's future. She possesses an effortless authority and a fiercely protected public image that Camilla could never buy, no matter how much sovereign wealth she tried to funnel to her associates. This weaponization of administrative protocol extends directly to Camilla's non-royal family, effectively dismantling the social and financial empire she tried to build for them. By permanently blacklisting Tom Parker Bowles from the Crown Estate supply chain, William ensured that the physical and financial heritage of the institution remains entirely separate from the Queen Consort's bloodline. There is a specific visual humiliation woven into this new reality. Behind closed doors, certain portraits of the late Princess of Wales are being systematically brought out of deep storage and returned to prominent viewing areas within the royal residences. These are not random decorative choices. They are constant, deliberate reminders of the lineage that truly matters. More crucially, the allocation of historic jewelry, which represents the ultimate physical manifestation of sovereign favor, has been locked down. The iconic pieces most closely associated with Diana are no longer available for Camilla's choosing. They have been legally and permanently earmarked for Princess Catherine, ensuring that the visual narrative of the monarchy entirely bypasses the current Queen Consort and links the past directly to the future. This is where William's silent, enduring grief for his mother transforms into a perfectly executed retaliation. For decades, William watched Camilla erase Diana's legacy. He watched her push her own children into the spotlight, attempting to overwrite the history that had broken his family. He never complained publicly. He never wrote a tell-all book. He stayed within the system, mastered the rules of the institution, and waited until he held the absolute highest ground. Now he is not banishing Camilla. He is doing something far more agonizing. He is making her irrelevant. He is forcing her to watch as the legacy of his mother is restored and elevated through his wife, while Camilla is reduced to a dependent who must ask for financial permission just to maintain her lifestyle, fully aware that her family has been permanently locked out of the royal treasury. The abdication rehearsals, currently taking place behind closed doors at Buckingham Palace, are simply the administrative paperwork for a transition that has already occurred. The world will eventually see a grand, dignified ceremony. The cameras will capture Charles stepping down with grace, citing his health, a reason the public will accept with deep sympathy. Camilla will be photographed smiling, wearing a beautiful coat, standing dutifully by his side. The press releases will praise her years of service, but those who know how to read the silent language of the palace will see the truth. They will know that behind the forced smiles and the perfectly choreographed exit, Camilla is walking out of the side door of history. Her 30-year gamble to secure the ultimate power ended the moment William realized he held the checkbook, the properties and the absolute loyalty of a public that had never truly forgotten the past. Camilla thought she was playing a game of crowns, but William was playing a game of institutional survival. And in the end, the trap snapped shut so quietly she did not even realize she was caught until it was far too late. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the shifting power dynamics of the British monarchy. If you found this forensic analysis compelling, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below on how you think William will manage the institution moving forward. We will see you in the next video.